Broadcasting from the Bryant neighborhood on the historic Black South Side of Minneapolis. Welcome to People Power.
Welcome to People Power, speaking truth to power by bringing you voices from the grassroots. My name is Merjan, and we are back with Season 2. I want to thank everyone who contributed so far to the online fundraiser. Season 2 would not be possible without you, and I have a link posted in the description. Please check it out, and please contribute if you can. And my apologies for ending Season 1 rather abruptly. I wanted to bring you one last episode to close out 2020. But unfortunately, I was not able to do so. But have no worries. We'll definitely recap all of the important events that happened in 2020 here in Season 2. Plus, we will go in depth of the history of the Black community here on the south side of Minneapolis, where the brother George Floyd was lynched May 25th in 2020. I have great interviews lined up that I'll be bringing to you with Dr. Brittany Lewis, who is a lead researcher at the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs at the University of Minnesota. I have a conversation with the brother activist educator Kenneth Holt, who was born and raised right here in the Bryant community, right in the heart of the Black South Side on 38th and 4th Avenue. And I also have an interview coming with the brother Saluki Fardan, who is the grandson of the founders of Dreamland Cafe, the Black family who pioneered the Black Southside community here. They were refugees from Tulsa, Oklahoma, the famous community referred to as Black Wall Street that was massacred 100 years ago by white supremacists. So the history here on the south side of Minneapolis is deep. Most folks have no idea that this community was pioneered by Tulsa refugees about 90 years ago. Crazy. And of course, we know that activists declared 38th and Chicago an autonomous zone following the murder of George Floyd last summer by Derek Chauvin of the Minneapolis Police. And we know that the mayor and the city council have been pushing hard ever since to reopen the streets and get things back to normal. We know here in the neighborhood that normal is what got the brother lynched. Normal is what devastated the Black community. I mean, we can go back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? As soon as they ran Interstate 35W through this community, it was the beginning of the end. You know, we saw infiltrators, spies, co-opting movements here on the south side and all throughout the city. After Minneapolis was placed on an FBI list after the rioting of 1968. I'm going to break this down more in future episodes, but we have to understand what's happening, and we have to understand why the powers that be do not want people in this community to know the deep history, especially Black folks, right? But there are some Black folks who still know that history and they're trying to bring it back to life because the future of 38th Street is tied to that history. Everything the activists in this community are struggling for, which is a new Black Wall Street on 38th and Chicago. We know that's not going to happen if the streets are reopened. And we know the powers that be do not want that to happen. That's the exact reason why they disempowered and devastated the Black community going back decades. My research in the off-season is nothing short of remarkable. I have new information on the war on drugs that literally sheds so much new light and rewrites history. I have interviews from family members who were part of the movement back in the day. They saw up close and personal what was happening to the Nation of Islam growing up in the Nation of Islam. And this all is connected to the creation of the war on drugs and the goal to dismantle the Black nationalist movement. The Black Panthers and the Nation of Islam, they were the two main organizations that COINTELPRO was targeting within the Black community. And I have an explosive local report called 21st Century Jim Crow in the North Star City. Check out my brand new story just published on the Unicorn Riots website. You can find it at www.unicornriot.ninja. Following the Minneapolis police killing of 23-year-old Dalal Eid, community members are growing increasingly critical of the punitive approach embedded in the city's law enforcement. The criminal justice apparatus faces increasing criticism for emphasizing punishment, violent abuse, and incarceration of criminals rather than rehabilitation. However, few observers recognize the active role community justice programs and businesses play in this displacement. The Public-Private Safe Zone initiative, launched in downtown Minneapolis in 2004, serves as an instructive example of how programs lauded as reforms can still impose punitive law and order tactics onto targeted populations. The first few episodes here in season 2 are of a film project that I'm calling Targeted: Young, Black, and Harassed in Downtown Minneapolis. And we're hoping to turn this project into a documentary film for the public real soon. But first, let's jump into the people's updates. Recently, there's been a debate heating up in Minneapolis about FRT, which is facial recognition technology. Councilmember Steve Fletcher, who has prospects to become the president of the city council, has proposed a ban on FRT, but he's leaving room for exceptions, I guess, in extreme criminal cases. We'll see. He did not have any good explanations for the community on the recent forum hosted online by the ACLU of Minneapolis. And missing from this conversation was the downtown safe zone surveillance system that has led to Jim Crow conditions for Black youth in downtown Minneapolis. Again, in 2004, the Safe Zone was created by Target Corporation, and it was a donation to the city of Minneapolis. Now, from that sparked this private-public partnership between the city, Hennepin County, Target Corporation, and other downtown businesses. We'll break this down in my special Targeted: Young, Black, and Harassed in Downtown Minneapolis. And just recently, the U.S. State Department declared genocide for what is taking place in China by the government against the Uyghur Muslims in the northwest province of Xinjiang. I have a link to the 2019 interactive article by the New York Times showing undercover footage from inside of one of China's prison towns in the descriptions. Make sure you check it out. Again, most folks have no clue how the war on Black youth in downtown Minneapolis and the war against homeless populations in downtown, here and downtowns across America, have served as a pretext to what is happening today in Xinjiang, China. While researching this topic, I discovered that the Uyghur population are considered an extremist separatist group by the Chinese government, and a decade ago, they were rioting and accused of seditious activities against the Chinese state. This should all sound familiar to you because it's exactly what was happening in the mid-20th centuries against the Black nationalist movements after the civil rights uprisings. Black folks were just demanding independence, fairness, and justice, full equality. Now, what happened in DC a few weeks ago was connected to all of this, right? With the right-wing coup attempt that failed. It's a trap, and many liberals and progressives are falling for it. They've been accomplices in helping track down some of these DC rebels by engaging in facial recognition tracking online via Parler, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other social media platforms that use facial recognition software. Please do not fall for this trap. We know these will be weaponized against the most vulnerable and the most marginalized populations in any society, especially here in the United States. Black folks, homeless folks, young people, sex trafficked people, people who are battling and struggling for justice are always the first people who are declared as subversive by governments like the United States, who claim to be democratic and point the finger at autocratic governments like China. We got to understand, and I'm going to break all of this down to you in season 2. We need to take good lessons from history. What has been tested on Black communities first is almost always followed up on the rest of the populations. especially immigrants, people who they want to make cheap and disposable labor forces. And now we're going to jump into our special, targeted Young Black and Harassed in downtown Minneapolis. This opening scene is from a protest after the police killing of 23-year-old Dalal Eid. The footage is by Unicorn Riot.
It's an attempt by government agencies and downtown organizations, particularly the well-heeled organizations or business, we'll say commercial entities like Target, to basically control black bodies. In other words, we're talking about black geographies and the control of black bodies through that space. So that's what we're talking about, racialized spaces.
This is writer, activist Renwalk Gaither.
Not only just downtown Minneapolis, but across this country and even beyond. It's historical, right? In other words, it's become naturalized throughout the time, that this city, this location was colonized. So it's become a naturalized ideology, we'll say, in urban spaces, but throughout the whole country, right? But we're talking about in the urban spaces, the whole history of colonizing and acquiring land, pushing off indigenous populations, and then controlling the bodies of we'll call it BIPOC communities across settler colonies such as Canada, the United States, and South America, is colonized from Europe. So that's part of it. Another reason is the time period where a lot of this safe cities grew has a lot of conservative ideologies. I would say back to, well, it's far back, but I would go back to the Reagan years, and even in the 1990s. We had this broken windows theory was gaining traction, and so basically it's capitalism, and capitalism, as it always has worked with law enforcement. They've always worked hand in hand. In fact, as you know, the genesis of policing, police forces and so forth came from slave catching activities. Slavery itself spawned in the settler colonies this idea. So I look at it as containment of black bodies and control. So that's why I think a lot of this is coming from. It's something that's always been here, but it's sort of naturalized, goes under the guise of cleaning up, making viable downtown, viable cities and so forth, which is basically a code name for keeping a capitalist system and profit making going on.
This is sociologist Michael McQuarrie.
In the sort of 70s and 80s and into the 90s, the dynamic really was that investments were leaving downtowns and central cities and moving to suburbs. And, we call that white flight when we're talking about homeowners. But it was also corporations. So corporations started moving to suburbs as well. And suburbs started getting rich. But what happened was everybody realized that if the city itself gets destroyed, nobody wants to stay in the suburb. In other words, it's really the city that is the attraction. And so in the 90s, cities that had been pummeled by this kind of mobile investment leaving the city, they started realizing that we need to transform our downtowns. And so what they started doing? Well, in cities that used to be manufacturing cities like Cleveland, Ohio, they started turning old factory buildings and warehouses into loft apartments. And they used it to attract young urban professionals back into the downtown as a way of rebuilding the culture of the downtown, which would rebuild real estate values in the downtown. Now, of course, in the interim, what had happened is poor people had sort of moved closer to downtown. Homeless people had moved in once homelessness became a thing, which to my mind really started with the Reagan recession in 1982. That's when you really started seeing homelessness in a big way.
This is artist, youth worker Will Mende.
When I first came, I was sitting at Harbor Life. Man, I was just downtown, man. I met another homeless dude, And you were like, yo, Harbor Light down here. So I just went down there, and you showed me where it was, and that's how I got in with them.
I started becoming
This is
outreach
former
worker
street
with
outreach
Youth Link. I had been
worker
an outreach
Carissa
worker
Stotts.
for different organizations, but we always followed the funding. So with Youth Link, I became an outreach worker from 2009 December to 2013, I think.
What was the organization before that?
Before that, it was the YMCA. Before that, it was Women of Nations. But there were all of these organizations, Into Young. With Women of Nations, their target was the Little Earth community.
So housed
Native
and
youth.
sheltered and unsheltered?
Yep. With Youth Link, it became, I thought it was just a general outreach worker where, you would have a lot of freedom, but it really became a downtown Minneapolis specific outreach initiative.
Yeah, man, it was dirty, it was stinky, it had bed bugs, and there was a lot of homeless people in there, not enough bed. And when the shelter was full, if the shelter was full during the wintertime, when I was there, you out of luck. You had to either find other shelter that was, hopefully they had bed available, but Harbor Light is very small, man. It's not, they got a lot of people, but not enough bed. There was night where, I couldn't find no bed. There was no bed available. When I went to the shelter there sometime, there was no bed.
Where'd you stay?
And, I just rode the city bus, man. That's what I did. I just rode the city bus till morning. And then hopefully, I just went to the school and took a shower in there.
What school?
MCTC, because that's the one downtown Minneapolis.
Were you enrolled at school
Yeah,
at the time?
At that time I was.
So you were a college student before you even slept at Harbor Lights?
Yeah, I was fresh out of high school, man. I didn't know about any youth shelter at that time,
Did you know about any college housing?
No way. No, I didn't know about that at all.
In MCTC, they didn't have any, huh?
They didn't have any at all. And it was my first time being homeless too, so I didn't know where all the resources was either. I was very green, they would say, and so I had to just count on people, and people who were in like similar situation as me, and they kind of showed me the ropes.
So you have these like decrepit downtowns as a result of this. You have homelessness all of a sudden. You don't really have the resources to deal with it. The social safety net is starting to be undermined during the Reagan Revolution. So you have all these sorts of problems in downtowns, the sort of center cities of American cities. But everybody realized that suburbs don't keep people. People want to have a city that has things like cultural amenities. It has things like a nightlife. Right? These are sort of what makes living worth it, right? And so if you destroy the basis of all of that, people aren't going to stick around. So cities started making a concerted effort to start rebuilding their downtowns. Cleveland, Ohio was a particularly important example of that, and then Detroit follows shortly thereafter. But it becomes a sort of basic agenda for lots and lots of cities around the country, and Rust Belt cities in particular. Rust Belt cities that tend to have devastated downtowns. But even in New York, you'll see things like, the understanding that homelessness is preventing the reconcentration of investment in Midtown Manhattan means that homelessness will get pushed out into the outer boroughs. And that starts happening in New York in the 90s with Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani, we now know him as Trump's lawyer, but he originally rose to fame first as a prosecutor in New York who busted the mob, and then as the mayor of New York. And one of his things was fighting crime, usually by doing stop and frisk policies, broken windows theory. All of that stuff was sort of invented by the New York NYPD, and also by pushing homelessness out of the center of Manhattan and pushing it out into Queens, the Bronx, and Brooklyn. But you sort of see that kind of thing playing out in a lot of different places. And so
I clearly remember one time I went down to there was like a Chinese food restaurant down there. It's not there no more, but I was walking back on campus there, eating my food, and next thing I know, there was a gang of police just around me, and I didn't know what was going on, and they just told me that I fit the description. I'm sure if somebody did a robbery, they wouldn't stop and get Chinese food and just walk down the street eating. So how the hell do I fit the description? They threw me in the back of the car, and they went through my backpack. Yeah, I was handcuffed. They told me that somebody just did a burglary or something, and they had to search my bag. And so they started doing that. And after a while, they let me go. Then they told me it wasn't me.
And so Midtown Manhattan, which was, you know, the kind of place where like artists and musicians would move, well, downtown Manhattan, artists and musicians would move because it was cheap, because you had all these old industrial buildings that weren't being used. Now all of a sudden becomes prime real estate. And now you can't have artists and musicians living in New York anymore. You can only have like super rich Saudi Arabians living in downtown New York, or hedge fund managers or something like that, right? It's extraordinarily expensive real estate. So you get this inversion. You get white flight, you get the movement of corporations outside of the city into the suburbs. You also see this in things like sports stadiums. Sports stadiums move out to the suburbs, right? All of this starts happening in the 70s and the 80s, and then everybody realizes what a disaster this is for cities, and it all starts getting reconcentrated back into the city. So you get this emptying out, and then you get the filling it back in. I mean, you know, New York started losing headquarters a bit in the 70s, but I mean, it still had way more than any other American city, right? So, you know, you never really saw quite the same level of decline. But cities like Cleveland, Detroit, Indianapolis, Louisville, you know, a lot of these sorts of cities in the Midwest, Pittsburgh, you know, you really saw that there, and that's also where you started seeing the real innovations in how we're going to reverse this trend. All right, and so one of those was like Cleveland's effort to really make the downtown attractive to young urban professionals, but it also goes to other things that you were talking about. So, for example, the creation of new strategic business organizations that would replace the city government for things like planning. Right? So instead of having, you know, nonprofits and to some extent city officials doing things like developing strategies for urban planning, how's the city going to grow, where is it going to grow, you started having things like Cleveland Tomorrow, which is basically a union of corporations.
In Minnesota, we have the Itasca Project, created in 2003 by Wells Fargo CEO James R. Campbell.
The spirit killing, you know, the psychological terror, and then it's like no wonder people are jumpy, right? No wonder people don't trust and have distrust of these systems, nonprofits. Like they see what's happening, and we're like, oh, trust us, we're here to help you.
In the critically acclaimed book Prison by Any Other Name, The Harmful Consequences of Popular Reforms by Maya Schwenwar and Victoria Law, Michelle Alexander pointed out in the book's foreword, I kept a running list of actors who are implicated in the expanding net of mass incarceration. But what about those we usually trust to serve us and keep us safe, including social workers, emergency room doctors, landlords, many of whom are required to survey and report our most vulnerable groups to a system of severe punishment? What about teachers, pastors who work with police departments to create gang databases, school counselors, psychiatrists, scientists who create electronically trackable medication that probation officers can use to track those under carceral control? What about people who run homeless and domestic violence shelters?
He started coming to us when he was like 13, 14, maybe even younger, because I think he did say, like, he said he was older to get in, right? How come our agency was never able to help him, like truly help him? We don't, who did it really help, you know?
And he came looking for help. Was he a runaway?
Yeah.
So he was looking for help because he wasn't in a safe environment. And he got put onto a criminal registry, the Downtown 100.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ain't nothing more important than appetite. I'm hungry now, but I'll be eating in the afterlife. Put my soul in rotation, it'll stretch if you pass it right.
In 2015, arts organization Culture Club Collaborative helped youth in the Downtown 100 program create a project telling their stories. Youth Link did not want their name on the video because it was critical of the police and the program.
You walk with the kindness. Then give your woman my finest. Bitch, I'm smoother than silk. Sorry for causing damage. I gotta live with this guilt. And I killed them off with the verse. Now somebody get them some milk. Thank y'all.
The Downtown 100 initiative is something that was launched, I believe, in 2010 to help connect the folks downtown that were having the most contact with police, to try to connect them with resources. There's definitely been some positive outcomes. Here with the young people that we're working with, we also see some really challenging outcomes.
Sometimes when I did bad, like steal theft from stores and, things like that, yeah, that's my fault. But don't arrest me for walking down the sidewalk and minding my own business. Don't arrest me for that.
This is former Downtown 100 case manager, Michaela Rolfes.
So it's a program that is a collaboration of probation officers, prosecutors, which is the city attorney office,
And Hennepin County.
Yep, DID, and then there's nonprofits like St. Stephen's, the Youth Link, and it targets like habitual offenders, so people who have the most, and it's not necessarily, this was something that was really interesting to me too, is that it measures police contact, not even necessarily charges, because when police have contact with somebody, there's a system that they can track that. So even if they don't give them a citation, they don't get a ticket, they don't get anything, but they have an interaction, they would track that. And so at the beginning of the year, they would just give us a list of names and the number of contacts that they had. So it wasn't just arrests or citations, it was also police contact. So it's that's how like the whole program was, that was the language that we always used, is the young people who had the most police contact in downtown Minneapolis. We didn't say the most arrests, the most citations, most charges, it was the most police contact. The way that the program was described to me was that it was this amazing program where to provide additional services to young people who frequent downtown, because a lot of them are experiencing homelessness, a lot of them are experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of things. So the goal was to get everybody at the same table so we could provide like coordinated services to them, and to be able to provide context to the criminal justice system when they were out making charges, seeking convictions, stuff like that. Because so many young people were criminalized so early, like 19-year-olds who were regulars downtown were getting hit with felony charges.
So they would start out with small charges.
But within the year, because it takes a year for them to get enough arrests to get on the Downtown 100, and in that year they were getting hit with felony charges. So everybody who was coming in was already on probation, pretty much.
So when Ann and YouthLink became an official partner, it was all about, and even Target says this in old newspaper archives, it was all about livability crimes, it was all about the perception. Of course, they don't say white, they say everything but white, but they say suburban, demographic, mother with children who value safety.
I've been hated, the most debated. Glad that I got me some sense and some patience. And while I'm waiting, I work on my cadence. I'm at the station ready for my spaceship. Yeah. Check. Look.
Oh, hold on. I got this. I finished that song. Oh, true. Oh, let me hear that shit, dog. I'll tell you what's dope, and I'm toast and failure and laugh is still my only motive is to
wake up smelling the daffodils, and I got the chills, just draft right and my passion will. I'm fast to kill, need my therapy, so pass the pills. And I'm mad for real, cause anybody could have had these skills. And I'm after real, hype the crowd with mass appeal. They never notice when you're crying in the pouring rain. Ignore the gain, that's prescription and it's for the pain. I get the.
Let's talk about the geo restriction.
What is it? What's the
The
geo-restriction?
geo-restriction is where they literally hand you a map that's signed by, so when it started, they hand you a map that's signed by a judge, and it says, you cannot go in this area. If you're seen in this area, you can be arrested. You immediately, on site, you will be arrested just walking down the street.
Yo, I've been hated, the most debated. Glad that I got me some sense and some patience. And while I'm waiting, I work on my cadence. I'm at the station ready for my spaceship. And I cannot tell you the future, the past was the present at one point in time. And pessimism turns to optimism when you're standing in line. Color me back with your words and your slender release. I don't drop random pieces like Panda. No.
But one thing to note about the geo-restriction is the map is right in the central part of downtown where all bus transfers happen. So the geo-restriction limited young people's ability to move around even the suburbs, outside of the cities. There's a lot of people who, when you're homeless, you hop around to different places. So if they have a job in Brooklyn Park, but their place to stay that night was in Richfield, they would have to transfer in downtown to get to their job in Brooklyn Park. And there was circumstances where young people were taken off the bus for geo-restriction.
Taken off the bus because the bus was driving through downtown.
Yes.
Wow.
So, but then the way the geo-restrictions were enforced was changed. So initially it was a judge signs an order for the geo-restriction, and if they are seen, they are picked up and arrested and given a new charge of contempt of court that they have to go up in front of the judge to address their new charge. I remember a time, it was in my first or second year, where the idea of geographic restriction was being brought in front of a grand jury because people were saying it was unconstitutional.
Who was saying it's unconstitutional?
I have no idea who brought it in front of a grand jury. I have no idea. The only reason that I know that it was brought in front of a grand jury was because the prosecutor, she was the one who was telling us about it in the meetings, and she was really upset because she was like, geographic restrictions have been shown to be an amazing tool for us to use to keep young people out of downtown, keep them out of trouble, was her idea.
So keeping them out of downtown was really a hyper-focus.
Oh yeah, they use geo-restriction. Like so many young people were geo-restricted. So we went in front of the grand jury, and I believe the grand jury found it unconstitutional. And so then they came back at the next meeting, and they're like, we're not able to do geographic restrictions anymore. But we can now do it, we're just going to do it instead as a probation term, instead of a judge order. A judge couldn't order it anymore, but they could if you were on probation. They could make it a term of your probation. So they started making it a term of probation. They could still be arrested on site, but they needed to contact the probation officer, and they would have to issue a probation violation hold on them to keep them in jail.
Yo, so I am about to do my So Gone challenge. I'm recording it video-wise, and I'm recording the audio too. So that's why I got the mic right here. I'm not showing off or nothing. So let's get into it. M-I-N-N-E-S-O-T-A, I am your baby boy. I never get lazy, boy, unless I'm in a lazy boy. So go check up on my check, I bet that you gon' pay me, boy. I do you like Sweet Pea did them little niggas on baby boy. I got the juice, bitch, you thirsty for my product. The only thing that is water and money I get a lot of, but trust me now you get snada.
Those meetings were horrifying. Like, the way that they would talk about young people, and it was like young people that we grew to know personally. And to hear them talking about them as like these violent people, these like just dangers to society, when we're like, no, that's insert name, but like who we know their family history, we know their trauma, we know what they're trying to accomplish. We talk about their goals, their dreams, right? And then we go into these meetings where they don't want to hear any of that. They did not care what
their goals and dreams were. They cared about whether they were downtown.
Raised by my mom, though I never had a papa. I'm dead day on third Friday. I always wanted a daughter. Tell my people my hollow and shout out to all my brothers. Tell my mama I love her and sorry for all the problems. Tell my girl that I'll call her and probably see her tomorrow. I'll borrow barrels of sorrow. My words are harder to swallow. Do this for the progression. Success is my biggest weapon. My lessons always come second. Don't want it, then get the stepping, Pam. Get the stepping, Pam.
Say you go to the Marriott downtown or the City Center or Target, all of these people know your record. Your name, since you're in downtown 100, your name goes right to the place and they'll be like, oh, we don't want you here. We recognize you, type stuff like that. So yeah, I guess that's either that or the police harassing you is the worst things I've gotten off being on downtown 100, or even just having that name.
You being on the downtown 100 list, all the police officers know you. Automatically when they see you, they think you're up to no good, and you could just be, you know what I'm saying, going to go meet some friends or a lady friend or just going somewhere to go hop on a butt. Their perspective is to be, oh, he's on downtown 100 list, he's trouble.
The good thing about the Downtown 100 is that people are rallying resources to try and help. The negative thing is that label is not unlike other labels that they've had, and it can maybe make a person feel like they're not gonna be more than that. Tell your story in the way that you want to, for somebody to listen and not judge you, that's therapeutic.
The first year we did an installation in downtown where a lot of the young people weren't allowed to be. And we cut out an outline. So they picked the corner of Minneapolis that was like the most impactful to them, which they chose 5th and Hennepin. And so
that's where I got punched by a police officer in 2003.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of people, there was a lot of traumatic stories on that corner.
Right by Augie's.
But they, so we cut out the outline of the corner, and then we cut out silhouettes of all of the young people to display. And so there was like symbolism behind it. And this whole art installation was guided by young people. Like it was all the young people's vision to have them be represented as a silhouette in a space that they are not welcome to be as human beings. And so we had a lot of conversations about, because there was such praise from the downtown community. Of
the project or what?
Yeah, because we got it in a storefront in downtown. And people were like, oh, it's amazing, it's so cool.
Including businesses or more activists or community members?
And like Downtown 100 people and DID were saying it. And so we talked a little bit about the irony of how they love to come look at the art that's displayed downtown to represent the young people, but they don't want to actually see the young people there. They just want to see cut out silhouettes.
So they appreciate the art that is generated from their struggle.
Yes.
But they have no desire to actually lessen the struggle for these young people.
Absolutely, yes. So that was the first year that we did it. We did that. We made the installation. They wrote a song about being on the Downtown 100. That's an amazing. I love the song, to be honest.
Trying to keep it 100 reasons police keep so much petty abundant. They got 100 people that they keep on the list, 100 laws to be followed, 100 tickets to give, 100 parents is wishing they could keep up with their kids. I see the judges is giving 100 sentences then.
Second year, we did a tour through downtown where we stopped at different spots that they picked, and people performed different things or shared different things that they had created. And in that, they invited their probation officers and the prosecutors and everyone from Downtown 100. Like, I don't remember who all came, but some people came.
I decided to slow down, because I kept on getting in trouble. Who wants to keep getting in trouble, And so I decided to calm down and get involved with the Downtown 100. It's about a 75% thing. 25% I say I've been respected by the police officer. About 75% I've been disrespected. Dreadlocks, dark skin, pants sagging, slangy talk, whatever, they're gonna think you either a gangbanger, drug dealer, a mugger, or something. You know, they're gonna think something negative about you. I got jumped and robbed by these two guys when I was 18, and I fought them back, and now I got a 3rd-degree assault. And if I would have tried to fight it, I could be doing 84 months in prison. So I told them I'd take the probation, which puts me here today. And I'm not really with that probation crap. I call it modern day slavery. So, you know, I don't like it though. It's like, it's a lot of things to probation or the Downtown 100, you know, or things just going on in the world today. It just really don't add up.
Acrylic on the top of it. Well, we did use the color palette that everybody jointly used. Like everybody could do their own style, but it all still kind of hold together.
The way the colors look, like to me, it looks like about a 7:30, 8:30 p.m. at night type of thing in the summer.
Yeah, and I remember the first year, this is like a cool, weird side story, but I remember the first year we did it, we invited people, and a person who randomly showed up was the elementary school teacher of one of the youth who created the art installation. And so it made it like really personal. It was really cool. It was a very sweet moment for sure.
And I can't trust a soul except my closest friends, my family and God. Cause every time I turn around, there's someone trying to hate on what I got. But I know that my life will get better. It's a cold world, so I gotta keep a sweater. Show the world I'm not afraid.
And that's my time for today, y'all. I'll be back soon with episode 2. Our goal is to bring you 30 new episodes this year by dropping at least 3 a month. That's the goal. Again, thank you to everyone who has contributed to make season 2 possible. I'll link the online fundraiser in the description. Help turn this series targeted young Black and harassed in downtown Minneapolis into a documentary film. I'll speak more on that soon. Thank you to Nexus and the Black-Led Movement Fund for being a sponsor. Shout out to Jason Soul, Tia Williams, and all the other good people out there putting in the work, getting the funds to the people. Special shout out to my comrade, Caleb Overly. Thank you for assisting us with the studio lights. Man, it made all the difference, as you can see. Thank you, Isaac Spector, for sound engineering. You can find season 2 on youtube.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, People Power Podcast. We're now at 100 subscribers. And you can find season 2 on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and most other podcast platforms. Shout out to all the young people out there struggling for a new world. We'll be back with part 2, targeted young Black and harassed in downtown Minneapolis. And as always, stay safe by staying at home. All power to the people who organize. Peace.